This podcast is a Uniting Heart and Soul production and was recorded on land that was stolen nearly 250 years ago. Filthy Hope was conceived and dreamt on Gadigal and Birrabirragal country, and I recorded my part of this week's episode on Darramurragal country. We acknowledge these peoples as the traditional owners of these lands, and we extend our respect to all Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander peoples. We here at Filthy Hope pay homage to the ancient and ongoing traditions of storytelling when we share stories on this podcast. Hello and welcome back to Filthy Hope, a podcast from Uniting Heart and Soul in Wallara, where we dive into the grey spaces where Jesus, life and culture intersect. I'm your host, Jonty Cornford, Creative Director at Uniting Heart and Soul, and this week, Revness is taking a break from being on the podcast, so unfortunately, you're stuck with me. But joining me this week is a very special guest, Julian Ciach, the content creator behind Click Church, all the way from Canada. Click Church is a YouTube channel that aims to answer everyone's questions about the Bible and God, no matter how out there those questions might be, and you should definitely go and check it out. If you're new to the podcast, thanks for hanging with us. Please enjoy episode 47 of Filthy Hope. Hello, welcome back to Filthy Hope. We're on Zoom today because we're joined by a very special guest all the way from Canada, Julian Ciach, the man behind Click Church. Julian, welcome to the show.
Thank you. Glad to be here. I would love to be in Australia one day, but I'm not right now. It's very late at night here.
Yeah, I think it's about midday here in Australia. Cold and rainy outside where I am. I don't know about you. But
it's been hot lately here, which is weird.
That's not what I think of when I think of Canada, hot temperatures. But
yeah, no, we usually the weather's going nuts. 2 days ago, we had a crazy hailstorm. Power was going out with everyone, and then now it's boiling hot. It's very weird.
Very weird. I love the erratic. That's kind of like what when people think of Australian weather, they think of like 1 minute it's like we have snow down in Thredbo, but then it's like 40 degrees over in Perth at the moment. It's weird. So welcome to the show. We've been trying to tee this up for a little while now. I think you reached out to us first, but I feel like I've been aware of what you've been doing over at Click Church for a while now as well. What can you just explain to our listeners, like what's Click Church? What's the whole online
That's
presence
fair.
that you're doing at the moment? Because I'm a fan. I love your videos, but maybe for our listeners
Thanks,
that
man.
don't know what you do.
That's fair. Okay, so Click Church. The short version is we try and answer people's Bible questions, no matter how weird they are. But we also try and do it in an entertaining way because I find the idea kind of came about. I'm working at a church and we wanted to do a digital church plant. And I was watching different videos of people online that I love to see. And I found myself just watching like video essays that were about things I didn't care about at all. But because of the way they were presented, I was like, oh, this is sick. I kind of want to watch this. And then I pitched the idea to the church. I was like, hey, what if we do something that's Christian content, but it's entertaining in a way that I find a lot of Christian content isn't? And that's what we do. And our first video was about if being a furry is a sin, and it was a lot of fun to put together.
I think that was probably the first one I saw, I think, as well. I might throw a link to it down below because it's really cool. It's really interesting. It's one of those things where like, and we can get into like the process behind this, I guess, but it's one of those questions where at first glance, it's like, what does that have to do with like Christianity or church stuff, but it's actually a really
Yeah.
interesting conversation.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
I find that like yeah, originally we had asked the question on this Reddit community that I'm a part of, where some people know a little bit about they know a little bit about God, but not too much.
Hmm.
And so I found that like for myself when I was coming up like and becoming a Christian when I was a youth, sometimes I would ask dumb questions or not like some people would think they're dumb, but to me I had somebody in my life who answered those questions that were a bit more out there. And then that gave me room to ask like the more serious questions that actually kind of gave me a foundation in the faith. And I think that sometimes like people don't answer people's questions
Hmm.
like that, like the furry question, because they might think, oh, this is just silly. Like we don't have to answer that. But I mean, in that video, the like I was on the furry Discord that's connected to Reddit, and the people I was talking to there, they really liked the video and they really were a part of it, and it was a good time. And I think that some of them they had even more questions about Christianity after that that they wouldn't have normally like been able to ask because they're not going to church. So yeah,
Yeah, it's awesome. Like validating and actually answering those first questions that might be to some seem really silly, actually then
yeah,
paves a way to ask the next question, and then the next question. Whereas I
yeah,
feel like with so many different things in church culture, we just say no, don't ask that, and then that's the end to any questioning, and then it doesn't go any
yeah,
further. So I
yeah.
love that. What I was going to ask you first though is like, can you I guess paint a picture of the road to when you started Click Church, because we were just talking before we hit
Yeah.
record. You're also in youth ministry, and I guess
Yeah.
how'd you end up there?
Man, it's weird. So, um, part of it is that talking about the person who kind of answered those questions for me, when I was younger, that was my youth pastor. His name's Rob. He's the if you watch the Click Church videos, you'll see he's in those videos. But he was my youth pastor when I was a teenager, and I was going through a lot of things, had a lot of questions, and he answered those questions and was very patient and very caring in the way that he presented the answers. Um, and then after that, I started having that kind of faith. I started believing in God. I started loving God. And then Rob left that church as a youth pastor to move out to Ottawa. And he became a head pastor at this church there. A lot of time passed. We would text every now and then. We wouldn't always be talking. And then in 2019, I got married and I wanted him to marry my wife and I and like be the pastor for the wedding. So we started talking again. The wedding was great. It was a good time. And then the pandemic happens, as we all know about. And at some point during the pandemic, I was looking for work. I'd gone to school for video stuff, which is part of why Click Church exists. And Rob's church needed somebody to help them with their live streaming and video stuff, as well as an eventual digital church plant. So he was like, you can apply if you want. I know you know this stuff. And I applied, got the job, started working at the church doing that. And then the youth pastor there at the time, they were playing Dungeons and Dragons, and I was like, shoot, man, I want to play that. What the heck? I've always wanted to play Dungeons and Dragons. And so he let me volunteer with the youth group, and like I've always loved working with kids. So I just kept volunteering with the youth group, got to know the youth a lot better, started doing more and more within the youth group. And then sometime last year, the youth pastor had stepped down, and then the church asked me, hey, Julian, you want to do this stuff? You seem to like it. And I was like, yeah, I'll just add this on top of my list of things I got to do. Why not? And so been doing it for a year, and I really love it. Like seeing, and I mean, like the same thing with Click Church, like answering people's questions. We're doing that exact same thing in youth group, like the same way it happened with me. And I'm seeing the kind of growth that happens in the kids because of it. So it's cool. Yeah, a lot of my job I think is just answering people's questions,
Hmm.
like youth group, Click Church, whatever. Yeah.
Yeah, that's awesome. Because we were also talking just before you record about like I had a similar experience moving into youth ministry.
Yeah, I want to
and
know
like
about that. What? Yeah,
yeah, yeah,
what's your deal with youth ministry?
yeah. So I like similar thing. I think like I was always I was kind of already involved in leading youth groups and had a really great relationship with still pastor at my home church. Shout out Phil.
Mm.
Um, and I actually felt, and I'm going to ask you this question afterwards as well, but like I kind of felt that
Yeah.
I was already kind of involved in these young kids' lives, leading a youth group, and similar thing, kind of answering questions that I know that I had at that age.
Yeah.
And then this spot opened up to be the youth minister, and I had no preconceived notion of like, oh, I'm going to be a youth worker and that's going to be my career, and I
Yeah.
have this. But all of a sudden, when this job opened up, I just felt this nudge. I guess some people call it calling. That I just had to do it, and so I applied, and with no real expectation that anything would happen of it, and then ended up doing it for, it was what, 2.5 years, almost 3 years.
That's cool.
And I'm still part of that church community. I'm not in that role
Yeah.
anymore.
Yeah.
Yeah, but I guess for you, and that's obviously that's the abridged version of a long story of like a large section of my life. But for you, like, I guess when you went through that transition and that change, did you feel like God was calling you into that, or was it more of an opportunity that you feel like you wanted to take, or like how did you kind of, I guess now in retrospect, you're what, a year down the track, looking back on it, where was God in that kind of process for you?
I think that like there's kind of a lot in that. Like part of it was that my family, like my mom and aunts and uncles, like a lot of them are child and youth workers, so they work with kids. And my mom's also a foster parent, so I grew up with a lot of different kids being in and out of the house in lots of different situations, and like having to like I wasn't the foster parent myself, but I'm still there for them in a way. And so I always loved working with kids, but because of my family doing it, I was like, no, I need to do something different. I have to do something different because I don't want to do the same that everyone in my family is doing. So I kind of tried to run away from that. I went to college for video stuff. And then yeah, once I got back into it, volunteering with the youth group, I just loved it. And I think for a while there, it was really good. But I don't know if I felt called to it necessarily right away. But then that same summer when I started, Rob had let me know that he was stepping down from being the head pastor at the church. So currently, right now, he's there as working part-time as they're trying to find someone new because he got a new position. And like as I told the whole story about Rob and how all that worked, like that was kind of like that hurt for a moment, and it made me go, dang, well, okay, I really have to think about how much of me being here and loving what I do has to do with being able to work with someone who is so influential in my life when it comes to my faith, and how much of it has to do with these youth and how I love like pouring into their lives. And so part of it was I had like a bit of I'd say like a moment of weakness, I guess, where I was really going back and forth on this, as well as my wife had been going through some things, and I think that everybody in their life kind of goes through something in their faith that like shakes their faith, and either they come out of it stronger or it kind of falls away. And so my wife had been going through something like that. So all these two things, Rob leaving, what my wife is going through, happening at the exact same time, made me go, shoot, maybe I got to apply for another job and get out of here. So I did, but I wasn't like, I still wasn't so sure. And then we had this moment, my wife and I, where even with everything going on, somebody had offered a job to me. And the first offer they gave to me, it was like, oh, okay, this like it doesn't pay more or whatever. I'm not even gonna think about it. Then they came back with another offer, and it was like just a little bit more than I was making, and I was like, oh, okay, no, I can deny this. And then they offered me a much larger offer, and I went, oh, shoot, I really got to think about this. I got to think about how much do I love what I'm doing? how much does the stuff that's happening with my wife, how much does the stuff that's happening with Rob impact how I feel about what I'm doing? And then there was a day that happened after this offer came through where my wife had come to church with me and she had seen how I was with all the youth. And we got home afterwards and she just hugged me and she was like, like, even with everything going on, I feel like you're really called to this. Like the way these kids like look up to you, the way that they are with you, the way that they listen to you, the way that you listen to them, like you really are called for this. And like in that moment, I feel like that's when I really knew. And like it made me tear up because it was just like, yeah, even with everything going on, I know I can still do this. And I mean, it's been going good since. We've been trying new things in the church, trying to shake it up a bit with the youth group, and yeah, it's been good.
Yeah, awesome. That really resonates with me because I think a lot of the reason why I moved on to a new position after a number of years in youth ministry was loving spending the time with the youth group kids and
Yeah, they're the
feeling
best.
so like what better way to spend a Friday evening? Like it's so much fun. But then
Yeah.
as it kind of became a job and the
Mhm.
money part of it started to actually take hold, and then when it came around to renewing potentially for a new contract,
Yeah.
kind of coming to the realization that like, well, actually I'm actually considering the finances of it more so than what my calling is to be a part of these people's lives. And regardless
Yeah.
of whether I'm being paid to be there, I'll probably still be there anyway. And so is it a good idea, not just financially, but in terms
Yeah.
of the posture of my own spirit and how I'm feeling about how I serve in this community, to be
Yeah.
renewing a financial contract and
Yeah.
keeping that layer on top. And it's a really tricky space to kind of navigate,
is.
like how money starts to interact with mission and volunteering.
Yeah.
Like it's really, really difficult.
Yeah.
Yeah. And
Even with that, like part of it I was thinking was like, okay, if I start this new job, then maybe I can volunteer with the youth group on the side. But then the way the job works, it was kind of like as I do video stuff, and like a big part of my career before all of this was like working on live events and concerts and things like that. That's kind of what the job was. So that can kind of happen anytime throughout the week. So it wouldn't really make it as possible. But and the thing with the money thing for me, and like what kind of solidified or just made me like think about that things will be okay. And I mean, they've been okay since. Um, is that I've always kind of had this. I mean, I think most people do, but I think about money a lot. Like my wife and I, we recently bought a house, and this was like a thing I've always wanted to do. We've been working towards this forever, and I realized that that a house, I saw that as like a form of security, like that it means like we'll be okay,
yeah.
money wise. Like if we have this, we're okay. Doesn't matter what happens. And then this weird thing happened where two weird things happened. The economy has been super crazy out here in Canada. We had a variable mortgage rate, which means it can go up, it can go down. But usually it means it can go up. Everybody
Yeah.
we talked to was like, go do that. Go do that variable mortgage rate. It's gonna be great. It's gonna be fine. There's never been an issue with it that bad in the past. And then this year it went up like 50 million times. And whoo, that hit.
Yeah.
It hurt. But then the weird thing that happened was um I got a raise in the past year, and then I got a second raise in the past year, and then my wife got a raise, and then she got a second raise, and everyone who we've talked to have been like, that doesn't happen. People don't just get two raises in a year. But and it made it so that we're not like better off. We're kind of at the same spot we were in before because it raised so much. Oh my gosh, it's horrible. But like, yeah, it just made me think back to like in my life, there's been so many different times when I was worried about money, but somehow like God has always come through. And like I don't know how he does it every time, but yeah. It seems to work out okay somehow. Even if we like just barely make it, we're still making it.
Yeah.
But yeah.
Yeah. I have experiences of like, oh God, I trust you, but you're cutting it close now. Like,
Yeah.
but it always seems to work out okay. So God's
Yeah.
kind of I guess I like to think of God as having a bit of a sense of humor about some of that stuff as well.
Definitely,
Yeah.
definitely.
Let's talk about Click Church.
Yeah.
How does Click Church then enter? So you've
Yeah.
like you've moved into youth ministry. Where does Click Church
Mhm.
enter the equation there? Because you have a history in video production and that side of
Yeah.
the industry. So I'm
Yeah.
assuming that obviously set you up really well to move into this online ministry. Tell me about that.
Yeah. So, yeah, like part of the original job that I was getting was to plant a digital church. At the time they hired me, they didn't know what that would look like necessarily. They just knew it would be something. They didn't know if it was just going to be an extension of our church. It's Bromley Road Baptist Church
Mm-hmm.
out here in Ottawa. And it was just going to be something like that. Our congregation is a bit older, so internet stuff doesn't really work the same. Like even when we had like a meeting with the deacons at the church, and I thought me and Rob, we talked through the whole Click Church idea, and I remember I pitched the idea to them. I talked about what it was going to be, and the idea behind it is that so it'll be a YouTube thing, and that'll kind of be like the main service, like that'll be like a Sunday service, and then after that we will go into something like a Discord group eventually once there's enough people, and that'll be where you can kind of build those closer relationships, and then after that there's going to be a next surprise thing, which will be like there's this guy I've been talking to online who made a Minecraft church that's been really cool, so we're looking to make like a actual like online space that you can move around in and do things in, so that will happen next. But so I did this whole pitch explaining all these different things, explaining the benefits of YouTube, like how it works, whatever, did this whole pitch, and then at the end of it one of the deacons was like, so explain to me what this YouTube subscribe button is.
Yeah.
And I was like, oh man, okay, fair enough. We have a very different congregation than the people who are on the internet.
Yeah.
Um,
Oh, like
yeah,
I can't even count the number of and I'm sorry, I know some of you are listening. I love you guys, but like when I've finished a meeting with church council, so how do you listen to a podcast? Like, what's a podcast again? And you're like, this is how different we are. Yeah.
It's very different worlds. It's very different worlds. But luckily, the deacons at the church, like they trust me and they trust Rob's judgment and knew that okay, we can make this happen. Part of it was that before Click Church started, during the pandemic, we there wasn't like in-person church services, and we didn't really have, and even when we came back, we didn't have like a children's ministry happening. So I came up with this idea where we created these videos that were just for kids, the kids that were at the church, and there was a guy who was a host, and then we made this like animated cartoon dog. My wife helped me make it because she does graphic design stuff, and so and like it's like it animates live, like it works with the camera. It's very cool.
That's awesome.
So we were making this like series of like yeah children's ministry videos that would just come out every single Sunday, and then along with that we had this like box that the families would get. They'd get one of them each month, and inside of that would be like crafts, lessons, all this different stuff that would go along with the videos. And that's like the start of Click Church, because then after that people are like, all right, Julian can do something with video stuff, that'll be cool. And then yeah, I don't know, then now we got Click Church, we got the format of it, it sometimes it's different, but what I want it to be every time is that we ask a question, or we get a question, then we go and we talk to people that are just people on the street, just random people, and then we talk to people who are like church people, could be people who just go to church, people who are pastors, priests, whatever, and then usually we'll talk to Rob or someone else, and they can be kind of like a more deciding factor on the subject. But some subjects, I think it's good to get differing opinions, because yeah, like Christianity, I know like some things are like set in stone, but some things it's like like we did a video on free will, and I know that a lot of Christians like view free will as different things, and the question we got was like about how do you, or like yeah, what's the point of doing anything if God knows what's going to happen, like is there no free will? And I think that like the point of the video we made was to illustrate that like there's Christians with different opinions on this. You can believe in God, and it doesn't fully matter how you feel on this subject. This isn't like the defining thing. So yeah, it's cool.
Hey everyone, just interrupting the show for a second to let you know about something very special that's going on in the world of Filthy Hope. On April 23rd, we're going to be hosting our very first live recording of the show, one of many, with special guest John Owen, CEO of Wayside. There's going to be live music, free food and drink, and a bunch of other cool things that you'll just have to be there in person to experience. This is a free event, but you do have to book yourself a ticket, so if you would like to come and be at the very first live recording of the show, follow the link down below in the show notes. If you miss out this time, there will be plenty more events like this coming up, so keep an eye out for those too. That's all, and now back to the episode. Yeah, that's awesome. I was thinking about this the other day, like, because we kind of have a similar thing where we, especially if we have guests, like yourself, we don't shy away from things that we might disagree on, because I actually think that the disagreements can illustrate, like, we share the same faith, and we have disagreements, and that's cool. Like, that's awesome.
Yeah.
Like diversity of opinion is really important. But I was thinking the other day, like, traditionally online spaces is like the worst place for disagreement. Like, you just go through like a comment section under any YouTube video, and it's like, oh my gosh, this is a dumpster fire. But I think this is why I think, like, church things moving into online spaces is so interesting, because I think often when we're, like, say for example, Sunday service, we're sitting in a pew, we're listening to someone preach, there isn't really that space for discourse in that setting. There is afterwards. You can talk to your pastor or talk to your mates or whatever, and you know, that's what Bible study groups are for and things like that. But in that traditional church setting, there isn't really much space for discourse, whereas the online space is so primed for disagreement and argument. But I think that actually can work in a lot in our favor in a lot of settings where that space is there for disagreement. And of course, as we see all over the place, disagreement then spirals into heated arguments.
It gets crazy.
It's ridiculous. But I think that's one of the benefits that I think that we saw when we moved. We had a similar thing, actually, because we had, during COVID, my job was to produce an online church service.
Yeah.
And then when people started going back to church physically, we saw our numbers drop pretty drastically, because we were not just providing a church service for our church, but for people who went to churches that didn't have the capacity to produce good online content. So of course, when people started going back to church in person, that wasn't a need anymore. So we saw numbers start to drop. And so then we were starting to have conversations about, well, how can we still be present online in people's lives?
Yeah.
If not in the traditional church structure. And I kind of jokingly said, well, why don't we start a podcast? Because, like, everyone's got a podcast.
Yeah.
It's like 5 million
and hey,
podcasts.
Filthy Hope, we're here.
Here we are, a year later. But I think, like, one of the things I love about Filthy Hope is that it's a space for disagreement. It's a space for, like, healthy, not even argument, healthy discussion about things that we disagree with. And I'm sure, like, I haven't even scrolled through a whole bunch of your comment sections, but, like, I can almost guarantee that, like, if you went to your furries video or free will or any number of topics that you've covered or will probably cover in the future, there's always disagreement, right?
Yeah. Sometimes there's weird stuff. Sometimes there's very weird stuff people are saying, but hey, it's all right.
That's
I think, like exactly what you're saying with online and, like, discussion that happens online. Like, this is kind of like a weird aside, but it's something, that, like, I was reading a long time ago about something that had to about, like, the origins of incels. I'm there. I promise this will make sense. There's a reason I'm bringing it up. So I was reading about the original community they had online, and how what had happened was there was apparently it was like a community of people, and it things were okay, and then every time somebody kind of piped up and said something that was like misogynistic or something that was really toxic, then they would ban that person. And then what happened was that all the people who were getting banned formed their own community, and the person who had created this original incel community, in the thing I was reading about, they mentioned that they had wished that they hadn't banned people, and that instead they had like taken time to try and have like a one-on-one talk with people before doing that. And ever since I read that, I've thought a lot more about the internet and how that's kind of what happens a lot of the time. And that, so what happens with the click church stuff is sometimes people will disagree with what we're saying, but oftentimes we get like DMs. Like it'll be someone will DM us on Instagram, or someone will DM me on Reddit, and they'll ask questions there. And like in that kind of like one-on-one conversation setting, that's when the best kind of discussion happens. Whereas like if it's just like a comment thread, there's always like people can like the comments they like, people can like downvote people, all sorts of things. So then it kind of just devolves into a mess, because it's like a discussion, but it's a show at the same time. Like people are watching, and like anyone can jump in and just say something and like dunk on people. But that's not how like real life conversations work. Like me and you are talking, we're not dunking on each other. And like
we're not being what can I say that's going to get the most upvotes? Like
exactly. So yeah, I know the internet, it can be so toxic, but I find that, if you can just get people separated from whatever community they're in and just talk to them in a one-on-one message, or even like a video call, it makes so much of a difference. Because then, like people see each other as humans again, as opposed to just like a anonymous, faceless thing leaving a comment.
Yeah, because it's so easy. It's almost like I kind of picture it similar, like when you're in the car driving, for whatever reason, everyone has this thing where you can say whatever you want to someone else in another car.
Yeah, the road rage could go crazy
because you've got two panes of glass between them. Like, as if that makes a difference. But like when we're online, we don't have that immediate face-to-face. Like when you say something awful to someone, you don't see that immediate, the way that impacts the other person.
Yeah.
You can just kind of, that felt good for me to put that person down that way. Look at all the likes I got for doing it. Like it in some ways, it can be really unhelpful. But I think the reason I'm so interested in this space as well is, how do you then use that infrastructure to do church in ways that you can't do it in person? And one of the big ways is obviously reach. We're having a conversation across the world, which we can't do unless one of us jumps on a plane, right?
It's true. Planes are expensive, man.
Planes are expensive. I'm flying over to Perth not long after recording this, which is in the same country that I live in, and it's so expensive. Yeah. Like it's almost cheaper to fly internationally to New Zealand. It's ridiculous.
Brutal.
But like how do we use online church not as a replacement for church, but as an extension of church? And so you mentioned the Minecraft thing. I'd love to hear more about like, what that looks like as an extension of church.
Okay, so I'm excited to talk about this. So part of this click church thing, like how it started, was also I was reaching out to different people who are doing online ministry in ways that aren't just like, it's not just a church service that gets live streamed. So there's this guy, he's out in the UK. His name's Rev Kev. He's very cool. I found him. I was just looking for like different churches that are online, and he has this Minecraft church. And so what it is it started as a thing that they were doing online, and now they also do it in person at different churches. But it's a community where like it's not necessarily that a sermon is happening, but there's lessons that'll happen. And like with the lessons, like sometimes they'll create different things. He implements a lot of like mods into the game that to work with the lessons. And like it's not, he hasn't made this space like a church. Like there's no building necessarily. Like people who were a part of the Minecraft church, they might create their own little houses and their own little whatever to like make it feel like their own. And like that was the thing to me that I was like, oh shoot, this is exactly what we need. This is exactly what makes like the online space special. Because like when you go to a church in person, you can like volunteer there, you can do different things, talk to people, and you're kind of leaving your mark. But when you're online and you're just watching something, you're not necessarily leaving your mark in that same way. And when people are leaving their mark on a space, it makes it feel like more their own. And that's what he was doing in this Minecraft church. Yeah. So whatever Click Church eventually becomes, like a huge part of it is going to be making sure that people are able to leave their marks within it. So yeah, and the Minecraft church thing. Shout out Rev Kev.
Yeah,
he
that's
is
sick.
the coolest, nicest guy I've ever talked to. I love him. He's the best.
That's so awesome. Like, I think I've watched someone play Minecraft once. I've never actually been involved in like the game, but like hearing about it, I'm like, that's awesome. I want to get get into Minecraft now. Yeah, I think because that's one of the challenges as well, and like you hear about. I don't know if you listened to the Rise and Fall of Mars Hill podcast that was coming out last year. It's basically kind of like an investigative look at the rise and fall of this mega church in the US that started as a little church plant and grew to be this massive thing and ended up collapsing around this kind of personality cult almost of this one pastor. And one of the things they were saying is like, as it was getting bigger and bigger and bigger, you got thousands of people in multiple different campuses watching this guy preach remotely. Yeah. And then they go out to their lives and they say, oh, I'll say his name, it's no secret. Like, it's Mark Driscoll's my pastor.
Yeah.
And it's like, have you ever met him? Oh, no, but I listened to him talk. Well, you watched him on the screen and then you weren't actually able to, like, then you went, and there was never actually that person-to-person connection.
But that connection matters.
For sure.
I think anyways.
Yeah. Oh, for sure it does. But I think one of the challenges of online ministry is then like, because the trap, I think, is to replace that with purely online digital interaction. And so not that it's then, okay, well, we got to get those thousands of people in a room with Mark Driscoll to chat to him. That'd be a nightmare. Yeah. But like, how do we then mobilize those people to form, and I'm sure that's what those churches were doing, to then go into their home groups and whatever and person to person interact and nut out those things together, as opposed to you watch the dude on the screen and then you go and live your life. Which like that in itself isn't a bad thing, but like, what next? What's the, because we talk about discipleship all the time in the church. Like, discipleship can't happen between you and a screen. Right? Discipleship is the next step after receiving content or learning or whatever, however you want to engage with that. That's why I think that Minecraft idea is so cool, because that bakes in the interaction into the digital experience.
That was exactly it. Yeah. And I remember, talking to Rev Kev about it, like for a while there, sometimes it was younger kids involved. There was like a group for people who were like in their 20s. And I remember he was telling me about how part of the experience for some of the younger kids, like there was a kid who wasn't really interacting with the lessons and he was just kind of destroying stuff, because you can do that in Minecraft. You can just break whatever you want. Yeah. But even in that destruction, they would come back like weeks from then and like talk about the lesson, and Rev Kev is going into it thinking that like, oh, okay, yeah, this kid's just breaking things. He might not be getting anything out of it, but he was still remembering everything because he was like there. He was there and like still interacting with the world, doing it in his own way. But I think there's definitely something to be said about that interaction piece. That's kind of crucial.
For sure. And I think an ability to allow, like, we don't need everyone to fit our idea of what church, like coming up, walking into church looks like. Like when we have kids driving their little plastic cars around in the background on the wooden floors, making a whole bunch of noise, right? The first response often from people is like, shut up, why are you being so noisy? We're trying to listen to the sermon. But I actually think, no, like, you want kids in church, that's the payoff. Like, you got to accept that, like, people are present and people are going to be present in their own way. And actually part of what is important about the church is that it allows people to be present as who they are. Yeah. And as soon as we kind of go, dude, stop destroying everything in Minecraft, it's like, well, you're kind of missing the point. Like, they're there, they're present, they're taking part.
Yeah, they're there. Yeah. That matters a lot. We, in our youth group even, we've had uh some people join the youth group who uh like aren't really from a church background, and so like there's a lot of things that they're not used to in it. And
Mm.
so sometimes it can be a bit disruptive to the other kids. But part of it is that I'm helping or trying to help them understand like it's good that they're here and they're wanting to be here. And like, yeah, if people want to be there, you just make it work somehow.
Yeah, for sure. And it's actually, I think, beneficial to other people to see other experiences of church within your
Yeah,
own setting.
yeah,
Because I think as church people, we can get very comfortable very quickly.
it's true.
And being shaken out of that comfort, I think, is really valuable.
Yeah.
Really
There's
valuable. Yeah.
this book I'm reading right now called Adoptive Youth Ministry, and like there's this thing I was reading in it that was talking about how a lot of people in the way that they've come up in their faith, they end up getting like really, really attached to their own churches. And so their church is their community, and they don't necessarily see other Christians as their
Mm,
community, like outside of their denomination and things like that. But after reading that, I was like, oh, shoot. Yeah, that seems kind of important. I know even I can be like that sometimes. And after reading that, I'm trying not to be that way because, yeah, it is important that we see different Christian experiences outside of our own and outside of what's just within our church and the people we know. And yeah, get used to that because yeah, man, everyone interacts with God stuff in different ways.
for
It's
sure.
cool.
For sure. Yeah. And I guess, like, my experience with Filthy Hope has been the people at it, like, in our physical church in Sydney,
Yeah,
um, are often quite confronted by the expressions of faith that are represented in the podcast, because it's not just
yeah,
myself or Ness, our co-host, present. There's other voices present as well
yeah,
that would almost well, not almost never, but like are not typical of the expressions of faith that would be present on a Sunday morning at our church. And I guess,
yeah.
has that been a similar thing for you? Like, do people at, is it Bromley? Did you say Bromley Baptist?
Yeah, Bromley Road Baptist Church.
Bromley Road
Yeah.
Baptist. Yeah. Like, how do they feel about what's going on at Click Church?
So okay, so the thing is, man, most people I think don't know about it. Or
Okay.
okay, so like or most like we had a meeting a while ago that was like just a general church meeting, so everyone who was a church member was there, and it was like a good amount of people. And I had to explain Click Church to them. I was supposed to play a video for them, and I've made this special video that's meant for the people at the church that's more tame.
Yeah.
That was like a cut down version of the furry video, heavily cut down, and but I had accidentally put a different video on the USB to play it for the church, and it was the video about Samson's balls, about Samson's pubes. And
Yeah.
so I clicked play on the video, and then like I was like, all right, like this is Click Church, and then I quickly realized, oh no, what have I done? And I paused it, and I was like, okay, let me just explain this to everyone.
Yeah.
So I think yeah, a lot of them aren't really watching the videos. The people who are the younger people in the church, and the people who are older who do know about it are just like, hey, I don't understand what this is, but it seems to be connecting with people, so I'll just let it be. Like I'm very blessed to be at a church where the older generation is just like trusting me with this because yeah, I know how people can be sometimes, but they're great. I don't, it's great that they're trusting me.
Yeah. Very similar to my experience. Like, I kind of, yeah, it blows my mind a bit that especially the older people in my congregation and the people on council,
Yeah.
which is I guess our equivalent of deacons, like, that they trust that what we're doing is worthwhile, even though they don't get anything out
Yeah.
of it, or they watch it and go,
Yeah.
"What?" Like, yeah,
Yeah.
or ask, "What's a podcast again?"
Yeah.
So very lucky. And I guess even like on outside of your church setting in Click
Mhm.
Church world, I can imagine videos like the one about Samson or
Yeah.
the video about, like, I imagine even in those settings, people are confronted or at least confused? Like, what's your experience been with
Yeah.
Christian, even not even Christians, I guess non-Christians going like, what, are we really talking about this stuff? Like,
Yeah, so I know, yeah, like I was talking about like people DMing me. There's this guy I've been talking to. Shoot, I don't remember where he's from, but he's from somewhere in the States. And so he didn't like, I mean, I'm not the best with social media. So I just been making different like Instagram reels, posting them that were cut downs of whatever's on YouTube. So I guess they kept appearing in his feed because one day he sent me a DM and was like, "What the heck is this?" And I was like, "Hey man, I don't know." And then I broke it down for him. We kind of had a back and forth talking about it, and like it's really nice because like I explained what Click Church was, and then he was telling me that he had a dad who was a pastor, and he's not a Christian anymore, and we just kept talking about God stuff back and forth, and it's been really nice. Like yeah, and anybody who is like, "What is this?" I love it because it gives me a chance to actually have that conversation. And with that same guy who DM'd me, and I think he's like one of the first people to DM me and just be like, "What is this?" He's not a Christian himself, but we were talking about some stuff in his life, and I asked him like, "Is it okay if I pray for you?" Because he was hoping that he could maybe move somewhere that's a bit nicer than he is. And then so he's like, "Yeah, for sure." So then I did pray for him, and then good stuff happened. Like he wanted to move somewhere. He wanted to hopefully get a job that was like somewhere near the water, somewhere near a beach. And I prayed for that for him. And then like a week later, he's like, "Hey man, I actually got a job somewhere. And it's like a couple states over, but it's by a nice beach." I'm like, "Oh shoot, I just prayed for that for you. This is crazy." And yeah, it's cool. I love it. I love connecting with people when they're like, "What is this?"
that's awesome. Like, praise God for that. Like that, and that's something that wouldn't have happened. Like, you didn't have the capacity to do geographically in your location. Like that's a success story for any sort of online ministry. I've had so many conversations with older people at my church. Like, well, nothing's going to replace being at church with real people. I'm like, but that story, that's a real person. That's a real person that had a real experience and a real interaction with another real person that had a tangible effect on their life.
Yeah, exactly. Like, there's so much that can be done over the internet. Like, if we just take the time to talk to people, I mean, it's the same thing as talking to anyone. Like, it's not the exact same as talking to people in real life, but like, it can be. You can still like be there for people, listen to them in the same way. It can make a difference, especially if it's someone who, like, I know there's some people who just like don't get out of their house in general. Like they might have different disabilities or things like that. So being able to minister to those people, listen to them, talk to them, thanks to the internet, it's amazing.
Yeah, for sure. And I think my experience with what we're doing here is that we initially conceived it as not for church people.
Yeah.
That like church people are already at church. This is an expression of church that's going to reach out into the unchurched and people that maybe have heard the gospel, maybe have heard about Jesus, but possibly not.
Yeah.
And if this is their first interaction with the gospel outside of what they see as boring church, great.
Yeah.
But weirdly enough, we've actually like at least 50% of our audience is church people who also are sick of the way that normal church structure works. And so I think we can often fall into this trap of, well, we'll do church in person, then we'll do the weird stuff online to reach people that don't go to church. Which like, sure, like that's not a bad strategy. But I think also there's this growing, and often younger people as well, like a certain age demographic that the current way that church works just doesn't resonate with them. And so things like Filthy Hope or Click Church or whatever it is, it's just something different. And it's also something where they can hear their voice and their opinions that maybe in a normal church setting, they wouldn't even get the space to express.
Yeah. Yeah.
But in these online settings, they have the freedom to do so. Like, it's okay to ask questions.
Yeah. Yeah.
Like, when was the last time you saw someone stick their hand up and like interrupt the pastor while they're preaching? Never happens. I mean, I'm sure it happens sometimes, but like everyone goes, "Whoa, what are you doing?"
Yeah.
Yeah. But you can do that online. And in
yeah, exactly. Like, yeah. I Rob, he's been asking me to do a sermon at the church, like on a Sunday, and I've been telling him, like, I would rather do a million youth group nights than do a single sermon, because like the format of it, just I stand up there, I talk, I don't know. But youth group, like, the kids will interrupt, the kids will ask things, like especially the younger kids in the youth group, and I love it. Like, I love having to make sure I know the stuff that they might ask about. And I love that back and forth we can have and that discussion we can have, because like, yeah, I think that that's where the real growth comes from. Like, even outside of youth group, I find like we have a young adults group that just started at our church. And like, even before I had moved here, those kind of settings where I'm able to talk and have that back and forth is where I feel like I get the most out of it. So
for sure. We've got a group of about 20, I've talked about a lot on this show before, but about 20 young adults roughly who meet midweek, more and more of which aren't going to church on Sundays because like that's their church. And it's much more of a, we have dinner, we talk to each other, we hear about what's going on in each other's lives, we pray for each other, we wrestle with something out of scripture. As opposed to, and I don't think there's anything wrong with this model, but listening to someone preach. I think there is actually a place for, and that's why it has lasted for this long, someone who knows more than you. Telling you cool stuff. Like, that's like, absolutely.
It's the best.
Yeah. So it's just a different expression. And I guess last question, I'll let you go because I know it's getting late.
Sure.
The internet is so young still. Like in the grand scheme of like human communication, the internet is like still in its infancy. I guess, and this will probably be a difficult question to answer, but what do you see has been the changes so far? And I guess looking forward, how do you see that the way church interacts with online spaces changing as we move forward? And COVID was obviously a huge thing that kind of forced a lot of people to reckon with this. Like, if we want to do church, we actually have to go online. I don't, that's probably a really difficult question to answer, but
that's fair. I think the way I see kind of, I guess, church online and how it might change is like that. I was having a conversation with a friend of mine about this the other day, that I think what people want more and more online just in general is more realness. Like, I know it wasn't like that when I was younger. Like, if people make videos or whatever, people used to want things that are more, or used to be cool to see things that are kind of more high budget and like cool looking. But I find like this younger generation of people, they just want something that's more real. And it doesn't necessarily have to be good looking or whatever. So I think that it's important that when we're doing kind of online ministry stuff, that it is real. And the other thing is like, this AI stuff on the internet, man, it's going crazy.
Yeah, man.
There was Rob the other day, he checked out I think it was on Chat GPT, he asked it to make a sermon, and then it did, and he was like, this is actually kind of good. What the heck? So I don't know what's gonna happen with that stuff. We're gonna have AI pastors. I don't know what that's gonna be like.
We asked ChatGPT in our Bible study a couple of weeks ago to give us an answer to a question, and it gave us like a better answer than any of us could come up with. It's kind of crazy, to be honest.
Yeah, that's weird. That's crazy.
Yeah. Well, I look forward to when we got AI pastors.
I wonder how long. I wonder if it'll get to that point. If there will one day be a church with an AI pastor, like, I don't know.
It's strange to think about. Very odd to think about. We should leave it there. Just, I don't want to keep it too long, but thank you so much again for joining us.
Thank you for having me.
Yeah, do you want to just like quickly tell people where they can find you, like where they can find Click Church, all that good stuff?
Yeah, you can find us on YouTube. Just type in Click Church, CLIK Church. I think you know how to spell church.
Yeah.
So, yeah, we're on there. We're on Instagram too. We're on TikTok. But don't follow those. Go to YouTube. Click Church. We're on YouTube. That's our main place. That's where the cool stuff is. So yeah.
We'll link the YouTube channel down below if people are going to find it. Again, thank you so much. I had a great time. We'll have to do this again sometime.
Yeah, thank you.
Thanks for listening. If this conversation resonated with you or rattled some of your cages, we'd love to hear from you. Feel free to get in touch on socials or send us an email at filthyhopepod@gmail.com. If you want to support us, then that really would mean the world to us. 5-star written reviews on Apple Podcasts are the easiest and best way to get this show in front of more sets of eyes. Or, if you're watching this on YouTube, just by liking the video and subscribing to the channel. If you're already along for the ride with us, cheers! Another huge thanks to Julian for joining me on this week's episode. And again, there are links down below if you want to go and check out all the cool stuff that he's doing with Click Church. Which you should, because it's awesome. Whatever it is that you're up to today, thank you for spending your time with us. We'll see you next time. And remember, take Jesus seriously and don't be a dick.